to the MMA Roadshow, episode number 130. My name is John Morgan. Cold Coffee, well, he's not with me right now. That man has flown across the Pacific Ocean. He is in Tokyo, Japan for UFC Fight Night 117. Meanwhile, myself, I'm in San Jose, California for Bellator 183. That's right, the team is split up this week. It's a little bit wild, right? You got the UFC rolling on Friday night, Bellator on Saturday. It's kind of backwards from what we're normally used to. So we are apart. It's good to be back on the road. I'll tell you that. I was home for 6 weeks, and man, it was fantastic. You know, having a little time off the road, getting a little rest, a little relaxation. I always used to joke that if I stayed home too long, my wife would probably get tired of me. And that that did happen for a little bit, but things are moving in the right direction on that front, and I'm glad to be getting back out on the road, even if I am rolling solo. A little bit different, not having my partner by my side, man, my sidekick that's normally rolling with me. We're split up and doing things different. So anyway, the show must go on. I'll tell you what. If any parents are out there, I will say, you know, as much as I travel, this is the first time that I've left the house since my kids started kindergarten, since he started like official school, kindergarten, and then also the first time since he started training at Extreme Couture. So now we have like those daily practices, and being at home, man, I've really enjoyed like taking them to school and picking them up from school and taking them to practice and being at the practice and you know, talking about them afterwards. So that's wild, man. So I mean, yeah, I used to spend days with my kid, but I don't know, when I used to travel, it was just like, all right, we'll see ya. You'll be here when I get back. But now, I don't know, man. Parents, I know you know where I'm coming from, right? Just missing those little things, I feel different, man. It's like a big, I don't know, it impacts you a little bit different to be missing those times, those scheduled times. So a little bit different. The schedule's going to start picking up for me on the travel department again, so I guess I damn well better get used to it. But I'm glad to be back on the road covering the sport of MMA, and there's no better place to cover MMA than in San Jose, California. Just an absolute history here that you're reminded of. I mean, it just feels so familiar every time you come back here. You know, it's not a place that has 6 different arenas or whatever. It's not I mean, I don't know. It's just it feels like you go to the same places, you stay in the same hotels, you eat at the same restaurants, you go to the same arena, the same venues, and it feels like we've been coming here forever. I mean, Strikeforce, man, you know, dating back to 2006. How many events do they have here in San Jose? And, of course, I mean, if you're a Northern California fan, you can go back even further. I mean, Scott Coker was doing stuff way before MMA was legal here in California, you know, doing the kickboxing shows and all that. I didn't have all those experiences. Mine started with MMA. So, for me, you know, it starts in 2006 and Strikeforce. And then, of course, the UFC came here. You know, Bellator has been coming here now as well. It's just it feels good being here. It's like there's been so many big fights here and exciting fight cards over the years, you know, under all sorts of organizations that you get excited being here. You feel like all right, this is a good place for a fight. The HP Pavilion, as it used to be known, the Shark Tank. What an awesome nickname that is. Of course, the San Jose Sharks play there. It's funny because it's kind of got that metal bin kind of look to it. I always loved the Shark Tank nickname. That was fantastic. The SAP Center, as it's known now, it doesn't quite roll off the tongue quite the same way, but it is a fantastic venue. I mean, it's very nice, even though it's certainly not one of the brand new buildings now. It's not an old building. It's very nice, and the fans are fantastic. I mean, they always show up and they're super knowledgeable. I don't know what it is about this area in mixed martial arts, but the fans here, they know the game, man. They really do, and so it's always fun. So I'm excited for this weekend. Excited to be here in San Jose. I do always take the long road to get here. Southwest Airlines does fly direct from Las Vegas, but I am a self-admitted American Airlines mileage whore. So I actually flew through Los Angeles to get here. I think on the way back on Sunday morning, I actually do San Jose to Phoenix and then Phoenix to Las Vegas. So, you know, a little bit embarrassing to admit that I'm that big of a mileage whore that I won't take the direct flight from Southwest Airlines because it would save me some time. And I mean, it's not like I'm really racking up that many miles on these tiny little flights, but I don't know, man. I'm a whore. What can I say? I will say it's good. I had a chance to talk to Scott Coker earlier today. We'll talk about that in just a second. It is good being here in San Jose when Scott Coker is at the helm of the promotion. I will say, as bizarre as it sounds, it always felt a little bit weird to come here to San Jose when it was a UFC event. And I know that sounds stupid to a degree, but it felt weird. It felt like you were like cheating on somebody or you were doing something you weren't supposed to do. Mom and Dad can't find out about this. Let's hope nobody texts us while we're doing this right now. It just always felt weird to be a UFC event in here. I mean, obviously, big supporter of the UFC. Covered so many of their events and travel all over the world to watch their fights. But for whatever reason, it just never felt right here in San Jose. This was Scott Coker's town. You had to have Strikeforce, and now that he's in charge of Bellator, it feels good to be back here and talking to him. So, as I said, rolling solo does feel a little bit different. Reality is, hey, it might be the reality moving forward from time to time. I mean, budgets are tight. MMA Junkie's doing good. Thankfully, knock on wood, we're doing good, and having success as a business. Because it is a business, unfortunately, as much as we do this because it's a passion and we love it. We do have to keep the light on at the end of the day. We do have bills to pay. But the publishing business is tight. The publishing business is tight. So budgets are tight. I'm telling you, I go to battle with my bosses all the time about where we need to be and how we need to staff it. Seeing me and cold coffee in different places at the same time or maybe only one of us on the road at a time. That might be reality moving forward, but we're going to keep the fingers crossed that we can find a way to make it work. We definitely could cut out some of the events that we cover and just load up on the bigger shows, maybe have 3 or 4 people on our staff at the bigger shows and not cover the small ones, but I don't know. Maybe I got the wrong idea. I mean, it's the big shows, the Conor McGregor, the Ronda Rousey, those are the fights where we get the most page views and all that stuff. But I don't know. I feel like as an organization, MMA Junkie needs to be there. We need to be covering, all the events. And I don't know. I battle for us to be there and make sacrifices and take shortcuts when we can. I'm actually checking out of my hotel room on Saturday morning before the fights. My flight leaves at 6 a.m. I figured I probably wouldn't be getting out of the arena until like midnight, and then I'd only have a couple hours. So I'm going to take my luggage with me and take it to the SAP Center. And then once I get out, I'll just head to the airport and camp out there for a couple hours. Maybe I'll find a coffee shop, something along those lines. Find something. Maybe if I can find some kind of 24-hour establishment, maybe I'll do that. If I can find a place to sip a frosty beverage, maybe I'll do that. But I'll kill a couple hours, and just take my stuff with me, save a few bucks. Those are what we're doing. But I want to see us there, man. I want to see us being able to bring you on-site coverage forever. If we weren't in Tokyo, for instance, would you ever have seen Mizuto Hirota's weight cut? Would you ever have seen that footage on the scale? I don't know. I want to be there for that stuff. So, that's the reality. That's pulling the curtains back a little bit. And, it's tough. Times are tough out there, right? Businesses got to make money. I tweeted out something last night, and this is a reality of budget cuts across the industry, but it worked out good for us this weekend. But it's only this weekend, and I wish it was longer. But pretty cool weekend for MMA Junkie from a photography standpoint. We got a couple of legends shooting for us. Dave Mandel, who was with Sherdog for absolutely ever. I mean, the guy is, I don't want to take away from Greg Savage and Jeff Sherwood, who are the longtime, stalwarts there, the head of that. But, man, Dave Mandel was every bit a huge part of them as well, of that organization as well. So I have enjoyed working alongside of him for years. Unfortunately, as we talked about earlier this year, I mean, he got laid off, and at least we've been able to hook him up to do a couple of shoots for USA Today Sports Images. I don't know how long that'll continue. Unfortunately, I have no control over that, but Hopefully we continue to be able to use his services, because he's a guy that's been shooting MMA forever, and he will be shooting for us in San Jose this weekend. And then over in Tokyo, pretty cool as well, Susumu Nagao, a gentleman who has been shooting MMA since UFC 1. That's right, UFC 1. He will actually be shooting for us cage side in Tokyo. So an honor, pretty crazy, you know. We to have those two guys both under the MMA Junkie umbrella, at least for a weekend, is pretty cool. The part that's not cool is we're just hiring them for the weekend, and unfortunately that means they've got to go out and try to book themselves the next weekend and the next weekend and the next weekend. But I'm happy that we could at least utilize their services for a weekend. So, listen, Bellator, I'm intrigued by this card. I really am. I've covered a handful, more than a handful at this point, of Bellator events, but certainly, not as many as I have UFC events. But I gotta say, I might be as intrigued by this card as I have by any other Bellator event that I've been to. There's been some big fights here and there, but I really like, this main card especially. I mean, the thing about Bellator prelims, they don't have the depth. There's no question about that. They just don't have the depth that a UFC card does. So when you get into the preliminary card, yeah, there's usually one or two. I mean, Gaston Bolanos, that's somebody I want to watch. Brooke Mayo, after the way she went out last time, I want to watch her. But, I can dig into a UFC prelim card and say, oh, I'm stoked about that. You don't quite get that as much with Bellator, at least not yet. Whether they'll be able to get to there at some point, we'll see. But this main card, I really, really like it. And it may be the UFC influence. I mean, this is a heavily influenced UFC card, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, to me, it's fun, right? I mean, it's fun to kind of have the crossover appeal. I mean, Benson Henderson, look, he's 1-2 after his first 3 Bellator fights. He's fought top-level competition. I mean, those are 2 title fights. And he had a blown-out knee during those 3 fights. Now it's repaired, and he's fighting Patricky Pitbull, the hard-hitting Brazilian knockout artist. I mean, this should be a fun fight. And it's that crossover appeal to me still. Paul Daly, Lorenz Larkin. Larkin didn't necessarily look great in his Bellator debut. The prize free agent, I don't think, looked fantastic in his first Bellator fight. Now he's fighting a guy that we definitely know in Paul Daly, a guy with a reputation, a guy that, man, now these two guys have a little bit of bad blood, which was fun to talk about them. Did media day today. Talk to Henderson, Pitbull, Daly, Larkin, Javier Ayala, and Roy Nelson. Those are all up on YouTube, so if you want to watch those, you can see the media day was a little light on media. Not a lot of media there, as these ended up being pretty damn near close to one-on-ones, but if you want to watch those, they're there. But Daly and Larkin, not fans of each other at all, and Larkin kind of outlined where the beef came from. Basically, from what it sounded like, Daly was trying to, say that he was afraid to sign the dotted line, when in reality he was like, "Hey, I just got to get some medical clearances done, and it's 4th of July, bro. There's no doctors open right now," and it just kind of rubbed him the wrong way. Meanwhile, Paul Daly is kind of sitting back and laughing at the fact that he's gotten under Lorenz's skin a little bit. So it makes that fight a lot of fun. I'm excited about that. Roy Nelson, as we said, making his Bellator debut. Roy's had ups and downs in the UFC. No secret there. He's had good performances. He's had bad performances. He's definitely a fan favorite, man. He's coming out to stand and bang every time, to throw the big right hand. He's out to have fun. Javier Ayala, kind of an unheralded guy there, but coming off a huge knockout win of Sergey Karatanov. Massive upset there. Roy Nelson, the thing is, I will say this, and we played it a little bit. I mean, I talked to him a little bit last week as well, but I definitely got to see it up close this week. It feels like he's re-energized a little bit. Now, how long that lasts, we'll see. Did that translate into his training camp? We'll see. But it was painfully obvious at the end of his UFC career that he was just ready to get out. He was done. He was going through the motions. And I can't imagine, if you're going through the motions on fight week, that you're killing yourself in the training room just for the opportunity to go through the motions on fight week. So maybe this will be a little bit different. A motivated, excited, guy in Roy Nelson that wants to come in and do something exciting. maybe it will be a little bit different. We'll see. Adam Piccolotti versus Goiti Yamauchi. A couple of top prospects there. Goiti Yamauchi, I mean, the fact that he's 24 years old, already has as many fights as he does. Great talent there. Piccolotti, undefeated, very talented as well there. He's been in a couple of fights where he was supposed to be the sacrificial lamb, so to speak, and he's been able to keep himself going. So fun fight there. And, of course, Justin Lin versus Aaron Pico. Aaron Pico, the highly touted prospect for so long, came up short in his debut. So, listen, I'm stoked. I think this main card has a lot of fights worth watching. And, again, it's the Saturday night card this time around. So, if you got plans, DVR it. But come home and watch it, Whereas, sometimes that Friday night's tough to get to, whatever. Well, now the UFC's on Friday night. So, I don't know. I got to say, I'm intrigued by this card. I'm excited by it. I like the fights that are on it. So, I'm kind of looking forward to Saturday night. Should say I made it in town late last night, of course, as we always do on the MMA Road Show, sitting down on a Thursday night to record this. Made it in town late last night. It's a pretty quick trip in and out. The Bellator definitely doesn't have quite the traveling circus that the UFC does, so their media events and stuff are usually a little bit more compact. Media day was today over at the Host Hotel, the downtown Marriott. Very nice hotel there. The UFC stayed there before. We were over there for that, and yeah, I mean, it was not a ton of media there. A young lady from Ring Magazine was there. She was taking part in the interviews as well. Dave Meltzer was there. Of course, he's a local guy, so you always expect him to be at the San Jose shows, of course, of Wrestling Observer and MMA Fighting. He was there. Gareth A. Davies was here, which I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe he does work with the Bellator's UK broadcasting team. Something, I know there's something there. So anyway, that was really it. That was really it. So, but it was cool. It was also kind of relaxed. We actually it was sitting down at a table, very relaxed, and had an opportunity to that. So all that is on YouTube if you want to watch a couple of pre-fight videos, just to maybe wet your whistle a little bit, see if you can get into this card as well. There's those basically my interviews there with a couple of questions from the Peanut Gallery as well. So had a good time doing that. Also had a chance to sit down with Mr. Scott Coker himself, the Bellator president, and talk about a wide range of things from just kind of what's going on now to what's going on in the future. Kind of reminisced about the Strikeforce days a little bit, what it's like for him to be in San Jose. So always a pleasure to catch up with Scott Coker. You will struggle to find anybody in the industry that has a bad word to say about the guy. Scott Coker, always highly respected in this town and in this industry, and always an honor to get a chance to sit down and talk to him. And I figure that is probably what you need to listen to now. Let's talk about it. Back in San Jose, certainly a special place for you. Is it still special for you to host fight cards here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is where, my fight career basically started and blossomed, and we had so many great fights in this town. Even before MMA started, with kickboxing, we had some of the best fights here. I remember when I first started promoting here, there wasn't an arena bigger than 3,000 seats, and that was right across the street at the Civic Center. There's no San Jose Arena. There was no San Jose State Event Center. So it was like a sleepy little town, but it was, it's where I grew up as a teenager and as an adult, and chose to stay here and became Silicon Valley. Who knew? I mean, really, it was not like that when I grew up, but it's an amazing fight town. It's an amazing fight culture. I think we've helped build the fan base to expect great fights to come to this town 2 or 3 times a year, and they've been very good to us.
I think you stacked the fight card here. I mean, this one is looking exciting start to finish. So, I mean, is that a conscious decision to be like, hey, we're doing San Jose. That's my place. Let's do this right.
You cannot bring a mediocre card here and think you're going to get away with it. They're very educated fans. I mean, the martial arts community here that really helped build the fan base over the last 30 years. They know what to expect, and they're excited about it Saturday, because if you look at the fight card, I mean, from top to bottom, it's pretty amazing, and I think the Daly Lorenz Larkin fight, that's going to be my favorite fight of the night.
kind of an interesting fight weekend. You know, it's a little bit of role reversal. You got the UFC playing on Friday night, and you guys got wrapping it up on Saturday. Is that fun for you at all to kind of be in that scenario?
You know what? I know that they have a fight in Japan, and really it's, you know, like I said over and over, when I wake up every day, I'm just focused on building Bellator and moving this brand forward and signing more fighters and signing more, you know, bringing more staff on board and growing. And Viacom has been, you know, very supportive, and they're extremely excited about Bellator. But I don't want to say I forgot they had the fight on Friday, but now you remind me they have a fight on Friday night. But you know, hey, look, I wish them luck. Japan's a great fight market, and one day we'll go there as well.
Very cool. So you got Vincent Henderson in the main event here. Had some mixed results in Bellator, but obviously fighting against, you know, just elite level competition. I wonder, I mean, how do you look at that as a promoter? Because you bring a guy in, right? You invest in a free agent. Mm-hmm. You bring him in. You want the guy to be successful, right? But I feel like there's also maybe a flip side in that the fact that he did lose a little bit, it almost like validates your talent level to say, look, just because we bring guys in doesn't mean they're going to walk all over the guys that we have. So how do you see that?
You know what? I tell you, when it goes back to even when we had Strikeforce, right? It was like, oh, you know, Strikeforce fighters are subpar to the UFC fighters. And now it's proven, man. It's not about the league. It's about the athlete. If you look at Tyron Woodley, Luke Rockhold, Daniel Cormier, Ronda Rousey, you know, Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler. I mean, these guys all came from Strikeforce over there, and then they kicked their asses over there. So to me, it was like, look, it's the same thing here. People say, oh, UFC, and then look, it's not about the brand. It's about the athlete. And you know, I think about, you know, I made a statement the other day saying, hey, we have the best 2 welterweights in the planet, right? And people are like, oh, you know, some people are like, yeah, this is great, you know, and people are really excited about the fight because it's going to be an amazing fight January 20th at the Forum. But, you know, some people are like, oh, and I'm like, hey, wait, hold on. Now, Rory did beat T. Wood, and Lorenz knocked out, or maybe it was a decision, but he beat Robbie Lawler. That's their 1-2. So how, you know, and Lima just beat Larkin. So how can you not say that's the number 1-2? I mean, to me, that's my logic behind it, right? So to me, it's about the athlete and not about the brand.
The other side of the table, the main event, Patricky, coming off a little bit of controversy last time, of course. But I wonder, I mean, this would be a big win. I mean, this would be a signature win for him. What do you think could be next? I mean, does this have title implications? Could Primus maybe be next? That's the fight he wants.
Yeah, I mean, everything's up in the air. We're going to take a look at this fight on Saturday night and see how it unfolds. But I know that Benson, Chandler, Pitbull, they all want to get back there and get in that title belt. And really, we're waiting for Primus because his wife is having a child, and so we said, okay, we'll respect the, you know, the fighter's wishes in that sense. But at some point next year, you know, we'll start getting it on, and this one will have some title implications to it.
Do you feel obligated to do the Chandler rematch first if he's there or not?
I mean, I know that Michael would like that, and I think it's the right thing to do. But, you know, sometimes injuries happen, things happen. You never know in the sport, right? I mean, it's something that we would like to do, but, you know, I think we have to stay fluid on that.
Nice. Talk about a Brazilian trying to be a title holder. You got a lot of Brazilian champions. You know, I wonder, as you're making this international push, I guess first of all, start with just, you know, having Brazilian champions. Is that difficult to market sometimes? I mean, we talk about, you know, being primary English speakers and maybe relating to the audience or whatever. The fact that you have so many Brazilians, you know, successful right now, is it a challenge at all for you?
I mean, not really. I mean, to me, it's like, look, whoever wins, wins. That's how I feel. That we're in a sport, and really, at the end of the day, it's like if they're the best athletes and they're our champions, then that's what it is. You know, if it's more Dutch fighters or more UK fighters or USA fighters, at the end of the day, it's really about the best person winning. And we have a big Brazilian fan base. We have a lot of good coverage over in Brazil. And you know what? I think in 2018 we will be heading that direction to do some fights.
Interesting. I was going to ask you about that because you are making a nice international, you know, growth footprint right now. Brazil, I know their economy is a little tough right now, but you know, with the success you have, you feel like that's a target for you, a goal to get there? Yeah,
absolutely. We definitely want to expand into to Brazil, maybe Argentina, start doing fights in Mexico. You know, we're building up an infrastructure right now to start a real big international push.
It's interesting because, you know, you talked about Strikeforce a little bit earlier, and Strikeforce was amazing, does so many wonderful things when they were the local, homegrown focus on the product. And then a lot of people think that, I think when you expanded and it got big, that's when things turned a little bit and got maybe more difficult. Do you feel like you learned lessons from there, or do you feel like there's concerns as you expand to make sure that we keep the quality right, we keep the recipe right?
I mean, you know what? When I think of Strikeforce, man, what an amazing product it was, honestly. And when we started, we had no TV deal at all. I remember the very first fight, we had no sponsors. I think Sherdog was our first sponsor, right? They didn't pay us any money. We'll give you some extra banner ads or something. And we had no TV. And we filmed it with the Sharks had a deal with Fox Sports here. So they filmed it in HD, luckily. So we have this great library all shot in HD from the beginning of the Strikeforce history. And I think about this great brand, and really there was the four pillars that built it, right? There was Shamrock, Kung Lee, Gilbert, and Josh, right? And so those guys, we kind of rode the wave for the first couple of years. We had an HDNet deal for a year. And then we had the opportunity to buy Pro Elite, right? And that's really when I think it changed. But I don't think it changed like, it got crazy or, yeah, did the economic impact make a difference? Yes, but really it's like, look at all the fighters you got with that deal, You got Gina Carano to come back, you got, Lawler, you got Nick Diaz. I mean, Jake Shields came back on board. We had the opportunity to sign so many great fighters and bring them on. And that's when we got the CBS and Showtime deal, right? So if you look at the progression, from the time we brought Pro Elite to the time UFC came knocking on the door to buy it, it was 18 months, right? So maybe I feel like two things that I've learned from this deal is like the growth of, how fast you grow, right? And without the proper infrastructure, because we were really very lean. But we're doing amazing fights. I mean, some of the best fights. And we signed Fedor. And I said this before, is like, be careful who your partner is, because really their vision has to be in line with your vision. And my guys saw an exit and a multiple that they felt very comfortable with. I was in it for the long haul, and so that's where I think the difference is. And I think that's the number one key is be careful who your partner is, because if I was partnered with Viacom back then, been a much different deal, because they're in it for the long haul. And since 2006, Viacom's been involved in MMA. Kevin Kay was the first one to greenlight MMA on a national network like that consistently, put on Ultimate Fighter, and then they did all these fights. And they without them, the next pieces wouldn't have happened, because back then, and you remember, it was taboo. It was like, oh my God, these guys are, fighting in a cage, and what's going to happen? And I remember in 2006 we did the first fight here in San Jose, and it was the CBS affiliate, and he comes over and says, "Are you? Is this like like chicken fighting for men in a cage?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like this is martial arts competition at the highest level," and I had to break it down for them. Like I said, look, in the Olympics, you can do judo, you can choke people out, you can armbar people. They have taekwondo in there. You can kick people. You can box. I mean, 95% of the techniques that you do in the Olympics, you can do in cage fighting. And that's how I explained to them. They go, oh, I get it. So it was a process of education between what we were doing. And UFC was, in the forefront there too, educating people and creating rules. But really, it was a general conception at that time that, this is like taboo. And that was my first experience with cage fighting here. And it was, an interesting time. But when I think about going back to the history of Strikeforce, it was I think that be careful who your partner is. That's my biggest takeaway from that whole thing, because it could have been a different outcome, because we had so many great fighters and we know how to promote, but my guys they just have a different vision.
You guys are ramping up for a pretty busy finish to this year. A lot of events all over the world. I wonder, you talk about the humble roots. Is it still fun for you? I mean, is it still a passion for you, or has it become work to a degree when you're talking about, managing multiple events on dates all over the world? I mean, it's a grind on people.
You know what it is, and it's something I just love to do. It's like from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, I'm pretty much on. And I think the 3 years I had at during the break between the sale of Strikeforce and then coming to Viacom, I had 3 years to travel the world, golf 4 times a week. Really, my life just stopped. It was like, they say stop and smell the roses. I got the opportunity to really do that for 3 years, and so I was like, this is kind of boring. I would wake up and I would go, what am I going to do today? Like, I have nothing to do. I really had nothing to do, right? And I call my friends, and they're like, I go, hey, I'm working. What do you think I'm doing? Like, I got no time for you. You're the only guy that has the time that I know. So really, it was a weird existence because for 3 years it was just like, and I got to travel the world and see more places than I ever thought I'd ever go to, and probably went back to them 2 or 3 times each over the 3 years. And it was a really weird time because at that time, when I first sold, I didn't know if I was going to come back to martial arts promotion, right? And I didn't know what the landscape would be like, whether it be too full or, you know, too empty maybe, or, you know, something happened, or, you know, the TV regulators turned against it. You know, like, you never know, right? So to me, I said, 3 years from now, who knows what the future's going to be? And so I just, you know, said, hey, I'm just going to do this, golfing and traveling. And then 3 years later, that's when I got a call from Kevin Kay. And really, I was heading to a different direction, you know, created my own company and everything. And it was a sit down I had with him that probably lasted like 6 hours. And I said, you know, I really like this guy's energy, and I really feel like he's onto something that I could really add value. And I said, you know, after a while, I decided, let's go for it. Let's go kick some ass.
Very nice. This fight card on Saturday, another fight that I think everybody's looking forward to is Roy Nelson coming over. I mean, a fan favorite. Of course, Javi, what he did last time out was amazing. I wonder kind of, you know, first of all, your excitement level for that fight, and secondly, kind of if that has title implications too. I mean, that heavyweight title slot has been empty for so long, and I know you wanted to get somebody in that slot. Mm-hmm. Is this a fight that could help maybe determine a championship fight? Or Roy actually mentioned maybe the possibility of doing a Grand Prix. Would you be open to that idea?
I mean, I think everything's open. You know, I think that let's get through this fight, see how they look, and you know. But we're putting the pieces together to do something really special. You know, and I haven't quite fleshed it out yet. But when we do, crowning the heavyweight champion is going to be something big for Bellator, because I've been waiting and waiting for the right opportunity and the right fights and the right meaningful, you know, two title or the two guys to come in and do the fight. I didn't want to just throw a title or bring this guy back or that guy back just to do it. I mean, to me, it's like we had other divisions that were extremely strong, and the heavyweight was something we had to build for the last 3 years. And I think we're almost there, but I think sometime in 18 you'll hear something really cool, and we'll do something really fun, and it'll be something kind of crazy maybe.
Nice. You've shown a commitment to the women's game as well, obviously throughout your promoting career. But
yeah.
Where does the future with Bellator sit right now? Because there's been some dabbling here and there, but you know, just now really starting to consistently put on women's fights. What do you see in the future of the women's game? How many divisions do you see, champions, that sort of thing? Talk about your commitment there.
You know, I think that we'll stick with our 2 divisions right now, and again, it was a process of, you know, how many great female fighters do we walk into, and how many have we built, and how many will we sign to continue the building of the female division. And honestly, it's something I think we're really good at. But it takes time. I mean, it takes time to culture. Like, I look at, like, when I signed Tyron Woodley, right? He had no fights. Luke Rockhold had no fights, right? You're talking 6 years later. Now they're in their prime, you know, winning the titles, fighting for contenders. I mean, it takes a long time to build a star or build an MMA fighter to really become relevant in this space. And so that's what we're doing now. We're putting the building blocks into place. We're going after certain fighters that we want, and we're going to, you know, keep growing the female division, and then, you know, give us a couple more years, and then I think we're going to have a flourishing, you know, female division.
Can you talk briefly about Bellator kickboxing as well? I'll be honest, we don't normally, you know, being an MMA site, we don't normally cover it, but it's funny, I saw the full card, and I read the names, and even not being a kickboxing guy, I'm like, that's a damn good card. Yeah. So, I mean, can you talk about, I guess, what your commitment is to the kickboxing and kind of where that goes? Because you know, it's a great card, but then it's not airing for a couple of weeks, right? I mean, so kind of talk to me about what the vision is for Bellator kickboxing.
You know, I'll tell you, when Spike and Glory basically decided we're not going to do business together anymore, you know, Kevin came to me and said, hey, you know, would you like to promote some kickboxing fights? And I said, absolutely, because I still love it, and I still love watching it, and I think they're extremely talented athletes. And some of the athletes have crossed over, like Paul Daly fought in a kickboxing fight against Fernando Gonzalez. You know, we had Kato go. He fought in. I think he fought in a kickboxing fight against Joe Schilling, and then Schilling came over and fought Melvin. I mean, so there was some fun dabbling back and forth. But at the end of the day, you know, it really comes down to the network wants 4 events a year. right now, and that's what we're providing. We're providing 4 events, and we're bringing the best fighters in the planet. Joe Schilling, Raymond Daniels. Gaji is unbelievable. Wait till you see this guy. He is an amazing talent. And then you have Kevin Ross. You know, he's a great talent too, getting his title shot. So you have the, you know, he gave us ability to, Kevin, I'm saying Spike TV, and Kevin gave us the ability to put on 4 events a year with the best fighters that we could put together, and it's something that I love watching it. And the first one we did in Italy, we had the ring, and then when the cage came down and locked in, I mean, it was really spectacular. And I think some countries will continue doing that. I mean, I think the Bay Area is some place where you'll see there's a lot of kickboxing, a lot of MMA in the Bay Area. In Europe, when we go to the Netherlands and we do a fight in Amsterdam, you know, maybe soon, they have a bigger kickboxing community than they have than MMA. I'll be honest. When we started going to Italy, it was all about Giorgio Petrosian, right? I mean, he was like, you know, he's an amazing fighter, and it was all about him. No one knew any of the MMA fighters over there. And people, if we just threw MMA, people, you know, it'd probably be, you know, 2,000 or 3,000 people coming to the venue. And if we go to France, we can go with our kickboxing brand. We don't have to wait for MMA to become legal over there. So I think that having the kickboxing is a way to stay connected to a lot of these countries that, you know, that maybe kickboxing is more popular than MMA throughout the world.
You, like I said, you got busy into 2017, but, you know, we're always looking to the future. I mean, big things going on right now. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of positive energy behind the direction that Bellator is going, the names you guys are bringing in. I guess last thing for me, I know you got to keep business tight to the vest sometimes, but can you give us an idea of what 2018 holds for Bellator? I mean, any kind of innovations or differences or you know, growth or you know, things that you want to achieve next year?
You know what? I mean, I can't just give you my playbook, but I can talk in general terms. I can just talk in general terms. I mean, look, we are a Spike TV property, and I said to people all the time, look, to be successful in this business, you have to do 2 things. You have to put asses in seats, right? And you have to have good TV ratings. If you can do that, you're gold. But I think that the amount of shows that we do next year will stay the same. We'll do 24 events plus the 4 kickboxing shows. Some maybe next year they might be independent, not, you know, piggybacked off the other shows. But you know, so we're going to produce 28 shows minimum. It could grow. And as you know, Spike is turning into Paramount in January. So we're going to become a Paramount, like, it's not Paramount Sports, but it's going to be the only sports property on Paramount. And people are like, well, you know, what, you know, how does that work? And to me, it's just like HBO. You know, they have all these great shows and all these, you know, scripted shows. Then on Saturday nights, twice a month, there's a, you know, a big boxing fight. Or on Showtime, the same thing. They have, it's really more like, you know, drama series and Homeland and you know, Ray Donovan. And then all of a sudden there's Showtime boxing. You know, that's kind of what I think is going to happen with the network, is that it's going to be really high-end programming, and then they're going to have Bellator on twice a month. But international expansion will continue to grow. You'll see us in more cities next year than we were this year or even the year before. And the mission is to grow, because Viacom, it's, you know, it's an amazing company, because when I think about their growth and their reach, there hasn't been any country that we've went to so far that Viacom doesn't already have an office there or have a TV deal there. They just launched Spike Italy like 2 weeks ago. And so they own their own network. So for distribution for us is, the ownership group owns the distribution. So this is a much different animal than any other MMA league, because it's really a, you know, vertically integrated company, from the ownership group to the television distribution to the sponsorship sales to, you know, international sales in parts that they don't own. It's a very special, you know, group of people or company that owns this brand, and I think the sky's the limit, because the one thing we talked about this past week when I was in LA was, how do we integrate Bellator, which is owned by Viacom, into other Viacom properties? You know, so don't be surprised if you see some of our fighters doing other entertainment, you know, opportunities, and because I think that when you think about crossing over to pop culture, nobody has done it better than Viacom over the last, you know, 30 years.
Hi.
Hello.
I'll keep it short because I know you guys have a football game to get to.
Not me. Who's going? You guys are going to a game? I'm joking.
So another thing that Roy had brought up was that he would love to have more events out in Vegas, and knowing that he has that fan and draw power. Is that something that you think you and Bellator would be open to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a really good promoter in Las Vegas right now, and they're doing a good job. But I think there's room for us to go in. I think the timing has to be right, and but I think that we will go sometime in 2018.
And can we talk a little bit about the women's flyweight division? Why you chose these two ladies to step up and fight for that inaugural belt?
I mean, I think they deserve it. At the end of the day, I think they're the two best females in that weight class, and I think Alima is somebody that we have, I think, a lot of hopes for, that she could build in something, really special in the future. But she's got to do her part. In a fight, you never know, right? I mean, in a fight, things could change, and and not be the outcome that most people think. But this is a girl that she fought once. It was a tough fight, and I think that it's going to be a barn burner.
And then, can you talk a little bit about Aaron Pico? What is it that you see in this young prospect and have confidence in him to bring him back for a second main event?
I think you have to look at the history of how Pico came here and how it all evolved, and really it was Bob Cook coming to me and saying, "Hey, we got this kid, and he's amazing, he's phenomenal." And the last time Bob said that to me, it was Daniel Cormier, and then Tyron Woodley, and then Luke Rockhold. So when Bob Cook calls you, you really listen to what he has to say. And so he said, "This is the kid. You need to sign him." So we signed him, and then I started, looking at all of his, past history of wrestling and boxing, and I go, man, he's already, 2/3 there. Really, he just has to get experience and tighten up his jiu-jitsu game or anti-jiu-jitsu game, whatever he wants to do, and then I think this guy could really become something special. And he's been a professional athlete, I think, for the last 5-6 years. When I say that, I mean it's like a full-time commitment to wrestle. And our deal with him was like, look, you want to continue wrestling, when you're finished wrestling, then you come and fight. So it didn't work out his first fight, but I think that he got caught. Anything can happen. It's real time, real speed. I think that he was fighting in a weight class that was a little heavy for him. So he's back down to 145. I think he'll probably stay there. And he'll be tested again on Saturday night. So this is not an easy fight. This is somebody that's going to come out and bring it. And he's going to have his hands full on Saturday.
Welcome back to the MMA Roadshow. That was Scott Coker, Bellator President, dropping some knowledge on what's coming up for Bellator in the future. You heard myself in there, and then you heard the questions from the young lady from Ring Magazine. I apologize that I don't remember her name. I met her today, but she got the great question there. I had to leave it in there about them possibly going to Las Vegas next year. How crazy would that be to see Bellator in Las Vegas? Also, the possibility Scott Coker mentioned earlier in the interview, possibly going to Brazil next year. I think that makes a ton of sense. They've got so many top-level Brazilians in the organization, including champions. Of course, it makes sense for them to go to Brazil. And they've been broadcasting there for quite some time. So, they've got a little bit of an audience down there as well. So, I don't know, man. Listen, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I don't see in my lifetime, well, my lifetime might be a little long, I don't see in the near future an organization overtaking the UFC. I just don't. Everybody likes to argue about, number 2 and all that. I mean, it used to be an argument, right? Like, where does Bellator stand? Where does World Series stand? Where does One FC, now One Championship, where do they stand? Everybody used to talk about that. I think it's pretty clear cut at this point that the UFC is number 1 and Bellator is number 2. I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. The UFC has such a massive head start in terms of, just industry awareness and global market reach and all these things. I just don't see it happening. But that doesn't mean that there's not room to grow, right? I mean, if number 1 is up here at 100% and you're down here at 20%, you could still grow 70%, and you're still number 2, but look at all that growth you've had. So I do think there are opportunities for Bellator to do big things in the space, and you got to feel like there's just positive things going on right now. Hell, the UFC said it themselves, right? The Viacom pocketbooks are deep. Now, Viacom is not only supporting, Bellator. I mean, they're not just, they're not going to go 44 million in the hole like the Fertittas did to see this thing through, but it's intriguing nonetheless. I do wonder about that Paramount name change next year. I wonder what kind of effect that's going to have. I mean, man, Scott Coker talks about the history that Spike has in MMA. If you go and listen to the Roy Nelson interview that we did today, and even a little bit last week, he talks about the history that Spike has with MMA, and it's so true. I think in a lot of ways the UFC kind of undervalued what the Spike name meant. I mean, the UFC certainly helped Spike, but Spike helped the UFC too. I think it was a mutually beneficial relationship. I don't think one carried the other on either stretch. So what happens when Bellator loses that name? I mean, the UFC took a hit, right, when they switched over to Fox, and I think they've steadily been rebuilding and getting awareness of where the fights are and how to find them. Of course, this week it's on FXX, which is wild, right? I mean, it's a different channel. So what happens when the Spike name becomes Paramount? Maybe nothing, but I don't know. I tend to think when there's changes like that, it does have an impact. It does have an impact. And I agree with what Scott Coker said. I mean, just because it'll be like an entertainment-driven platform doesn't mean that sports doesn't fit in. I thought the Showtime sports, boxing, it's great. I get HBO and Showtime. I love real sports on HBO. Hard Knocks is great. The Showtime Championship Boxing, of course, Strikeforce for years when it was on Showtime. I mean, yes, sports can fit in a platform like that, but I do wonder, is it going to have a negative impact when that Spike name goes away? So, anyway, interesting times for Bellator. Should say if you like what you're hearing, then let us know about it. I would appreciate. If you're on iTunes, do me a favor. Take a moment, log in, rate us, and review us. Leave feedback. I love reading that feedback. I really do. I don't have Russ from Boston this week like we did last week to do the amazing pitch about what it does to everything behind the scenes and the algorithms and all that. But he did a fantastic job. But if you can leave us feedback on iTunes, definitely do that. Also, if you don't have a preferred platform, give Audio Boom a try. I'm not going to lie. I don't know a lot about Audio Boom, but I'm learning about it. MMA Junkie Radio just switched over to Audio Boom as well. Now they're part of the USA Today Sports Podcast Network. I mean, they're still Sirius XM. Those are the big boys. They're everywhere. They got all that. But they're going to be part of the USA Today Sports Podcast Network as well. So it's cool. It's cool to see our little family. Our little MMA family is sitting right there alongside NFL and NBA and all that stuff. So kind of a cool little growing platform under the USA Today Sports umbrella. Speaking of things that happened last week, speaking of Russ from Boston, how great was UFC Fight Night 116 in Pittsburgh? How great was that show? I wanted to do a damn and a half on that show. And a half? It was so good. I'm going to get back to that. I will be back to the and a halves real soon. Been dealing with some things. I think I've gotten to some better places now, and yeah, we'll be doing that because that fight card was so fun. I don't care how under the radar it was. I don't care if nobody listened. I was just geeked up, man. I just wanted to talk about it. Started with the very first fight, Gilbert Burns with that big knockout. Uriah Hall, my God, what a fight that was. The comeback, just getting his ass kicked by Krzysztof Jotko. It's funny because Uriah's been training at Extreme Couture, so I'd been seeing him a little bit here and there, just taking my kid up there to train, and went back in the gym the next week and was talking to the coaching staff, and they were like, did you like our game plan? We were just kind of just rope-a-dope there, just laying it out in the first round. Man, I mean, Krzysztof Jotko had that thing in the bag, and then Uriah Hall brought it all back. I mean, what an emotional win for that guy. And a mercurial dude, no doubt about it, man. It's a guy that has his ups and downs, but hopefully that's one that'll help him, kind of instill some self-confidence and really believe in himself. That was great. It kept going with Daniel Spitz. Whether you believe it was a legit stoppage or not, 24 seconds, that's a big win. You had a couple decision wins after that. There were some decent fights. Kamaru Usman came in. That guy just gets better and better. Man, that was a fight I was keyed in on going into the week, and good Lord, man, he is a problem, and what he says is true. That man is a problem. Gregor Gillespie, man, this is what I'm saying. These smaller cards, I love getting these names. Gregor Gillespie, maybe a guy you haven't heard of. We've been watching them. We've been seeing those cards, and that's why I love these smaller cards. You find these athletes that you identify with and that you want to follow. That's why I love watching these shows. You know, it's not that you're trying to be super smart MMA guy that I know everything. No, it's just, you know, as much as we love the sport and you love the fights, it helps to have a little bit of interest in there, right? And if you can find and identify these athletes that you're on board with, that you want to follow their career, man, it just makes every step of the way, I think, more entertaining to watch and more intriguing because you know kind of where they've been, where they're going. And man, this card delivered. Anthony Smith didn't look great the first 2 rounds, but had the big finish of Hector Lombard at the end. That was big, man. Anthony Smith continues to do good things. Mike Perry, I know a lot of people don't like Mike Perry. I like Mike Perry. I don't care if anybody hates me for saying it. I like Mike Perry. Now, if everybody on the UFC roster was like Mike Perry, might not like the sport quite as much. But they're not. Mike Perry's Mike Perry. You need a couple of those every now and then. So, man, I thought he was phenomenal. Of course, Alex Reyes, kudos to him, a guy that doesn't even fight in that weight class, stepped up on short notice. He lost. Take nothing away from Alex Reyes. He'll get another shot, and deservedly so. And then Luke Rockhold, David Branch, thought that was great. David Branch did everything he said he was going to do, brought it, made it aggressive. So anyway, look, if you missed any of those fights, hopefully you recorded it because that was just an awesome card. Now, Scott Coker, as we were talking to him, you heard him talk a little bit about Bellator kickboxing. Just to clarify, because I had some people asking, the kickboxing is going to be taped. And it's not going to air till October 6th, which is a little weird. I'm not a fan of that at all, to be honest with you. It's going to air after Bellator 184, so that'll be a full night of combat sports. But this Bellator kickboxing card is pretty solid. Kareem Gaji versus Raymond Daniels. Kevin Ross is on there. Joe Schilling's on there. Jarena Bars, of course, you know her name from the tussle with Chris Cyborg. Malapet is on there. I mean, this is a solid kickboxing card. But here's how it's going to go down. Prelims are going to happen in San Jose for MMA. Main card is going to happen for MMA. Then the cage will be brought up into the air with the flying cage. It will be kickboxing at that point. The main card first, and then a couple of dark matches to finish the night. And then that main card will be recorded, and it will be broadcast on October 6th after Bellator 184. A little bit weird. I don't know. It's not like we're trying to have spoilers or whatever. What are you supposed to do for 2 weeks? I mean, we're going to live report, I guess. I mean, I don't know how many people care, but it is a pretty solid little kickboxing lineup, I'm not going to lie. So, intrigued. It's cool. I do like the fact they're not doing the side-by-side, the dynamite thing. As cool as that concept was, it's just a weird setup. So I like this flying cage thing. Did you guys see that video where the cage will actually lift up, and then they'll drill in the ring post for the kickboxing ring? I think they said it takes like 15 minutes. So, pretty interesting to see. Something else that's interesting. Did you guys see Team Alpha Male coach Justin Buchholz pick up a win at Alaska Fighting Championship this week, 133? If you have Fight Pass and you didn't see this, fire it up as soon as we get done. Write yourself a note. Fire it up. You can put it on the background. Just don't press pause. I mean, don't stop because I want to make sure you come back. But you gotta watch this thing. You really got to watch this thing. The guy basically that Justin Buchholz is fighting slips to the floor. And then Justin Buchholz starts soccer kicking him to the body. And one of the kicks slips over the shoulder, basically. There's the guy adjusted his body position a little bit, and Buchholz got a little bit careless with the kick. And it kind of slipped over the shoulder, and it looked like the top of the foot caught part of the head. Now listen, I am one guy who says don't doubt anybody. You know, if somebody gets hit in the groin and they drop down, don't say they're faking it. They're fighters. They are doing something that I will never ever do, and that is lock myself in a cage with another human being hell bent on causing me physical damage. So I say this with the utmost respect to all fighters, but it is the weirdest reaction. I mean, the guy goes limp, basically. It's it looks like a grazing shot to the back of the head, but I know there's nerves there and all those things, but it's the weirdest reaction ever. So that's bizarre. And then the guy is eventually stretchered out, and I hope he's okay at this point. I've been busy all day with media day. I haven't been able to follow up with any medical response. So hopefully the guy's okay. But then it's bizarre because Justin is awarded a TKO win, which good for him. I don't think he deserved a DQ or anything like that. But if the guy is basically like ruled out of the fight from essentially an illegal blow, even if it was an accidental illegal blow, shouldn't that have been a no contest? I mean, the reaction seems a little bit excessive, but if that's what we're saying, stop the fight, isn't that a no contest? I don't know. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It was, like I said, if you got Fight Pass, fire it up. Alaska Fighting Championship 133. Justin Buchholz making his long-awaited return to action, and good for him. I like Justin, man. He is a great dude. The guys at Team Alpha Male are all solid cats, and I'm happy for him, man. I'm happy that he won. I'm happy that he picked up a paycheck, whatever that paycheck may have been. Happy for all of that. But it doesn't make the whole thing any less bizarre. So, crazy. All right. Listen. While I'm here in San Jose, as I said, the man Cold Coffee is over in Tokyo, Japan. Of course, the fights are up the road a little bit. It's Saitama. It's Saitama Super Arena, the legendary venue that hosted so many Pride fights back in the day. UFC Fight Night 117, of course, flying a touch under the radar, understandably so. We talk about depth on prelims and things like that. I mean, you look at this card, and I understand there's going to be fights that people struggle to find interesting. Hyung-Gyu Lim, I'm a big fan of his, so I'm excited for that one. But I get it. Some of the other prelims that are out there, it's a little tough. I mean, Juicy Formiga versus Gokhan Saki, that to me is a sick fight. I mean, you can put that anywhere. I love that fight. That's probably the prelim I'm most looking forward to be honest with you. Alex Morono's back in action. Of course, he's fun to watch as well. Then you get to the main card, and I'm pretty excited about some of this. Mizuto Hirota versus Charles Rosa. Of course, Hirota, we'll see how that goes. Definitely, we'll talk about that in a second, but he had his issues. Rolando D versus Teruto Ishihara. You know we're Teruto guys. The MMA Roadshow are Teruto guys. As I said, fun to identify people and kind of follow their career. Gokhan Saki making his debut. Takanori Gomi, in bad need of a win, but still a legend nonetheless against the Maestro Dong-Hyun Kim. The big fight on the card, the most meaningful fight, no question about it, Jessica Andrade versus Claudia Gadelha. And, of course, the main event, Vince St. Preux versus Yushin Okami. Is it weird to say maybe I'm more intrigued by Yushin Okami being in there than I would have been for Shogun? No disrespect to Shogun, an absolute legend. But I don't know. Okami, the Japanese fighter, coming in on late notice. I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know. I guess it might be a stretch to say I'm more intrigued because, I mean, this is a fight Vince St. Preux should win, but crazier things have happened, and Yushin Okami is a gamer, and he's not going to go away easy. He's going to be incredibly outsized in this fight, and I can't imagine how well prepared he was on a week's notice, but I mean, I might honestly be more intrigued than I don't know. I wasn't feeling OSP versus Shogun 2. It wasn't speaking to me. So, yeah, I don't know. Jessica Andrade, Claudia Gadelha. That's the fight that really most matters. But then there are a couple other things on here that I'm pretty intrigued about. But one of those is Gokhan Saki. The idea that the UFC would bring somebody in that's 0-1 in his MMA career, I like it. It's something different. This is a guy that's done some great things in kickboxing, so it's not like he's not an established name. It's not like, this isn't a CM Punk scenario. No offense to CM Punk, but this is not somebody that we haven't seen in live combat sports. I mean, this is somebody that is incredibly dangerous as a striker. Can that translate to MMA? I don't know. But you know what? I like the fact that we're going to give it a shot. We talk all the time about bringing in excitement, just doing something a little different. And this to me is a little different. Now, I feel like the buzz is building a little bit, but it seemed like the UFC was slow to get things rolling. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I do feel like it is starting to get a little bit of hype, and deservedly so. And listen, Cold Coffee, being over there in Tokyo, he had a chance to sit down with Gokhan Saki, and I thought the interview was pretty good. I'd like to call it our latest in the series of Cold Coffee's Casual Conversations. But there is nothing that Gokhan Saki does that is casual. The man is intense. If you don't know about him, find out a little bit more now.
I was looking into your past. You played soccer as a kid, but at the same time that you started kickboxing, but you eventually chose kickboxing. But how good were you in soccer?
I was very good with soccer. I started playing soccer when I was 6 years old, and I played soccer till 15. I started kickboxing when I was 11, so 4 years. I play soccer and I do kickboxing the same time. So when I was 15, 16, I have to choose one of them. And that time was difficult. I get some options, but to play for a big soccer team, but I was a problem child, and I was not a team worker. So for me, it was better to choose for kickboxing, because you go in the ring and you have to do everything yourself, you know. So you're not asking to give me the ball or whatever. So that's why I choose for kickboxing.
Did you ever look back and wonder, you know, if things had went differently? How well do you think you would have done if you stayed in soccer?
I don't know. You know, I think I was a very good soccer player. Everybody was always coming and watching my soccer games, friends, families, and I don't know. I have a lot of football friends. They playing a high level, so sometimes I go watch in the stadium and I'm wondering like, whoa, if I keep play soccer, what will happen now, you know? But this is the past. Now we're doing the UFC octagon, you know, so.
There you go.
There we go.
Well, first, how was camp for this? How was your training camp for this fight?
I know in the beginning it was difficult, because normally I was training every morning kickboxing, and in the night I was training weights and condition training, and now MMA, you know, is also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling. So in the beginning it was a little bit hard to make my schedule ready, you know, but I travel a little bit, like I go Sweden, I go Turkey, I start in Dubai, and I see different teams, the way how they train, and from there I make my own schedule, and I do everyday things, what I think, what I have to do and what I need to do. Sometimes I was tired to train weights, I do easy kickboxing or easy jiu-jitsu or easy wrestling, you know. So I was looking from day to day, and in the end the package came together, and I train good and I'm ready, you know.
How would a training for this compare to what you used to do for your kickboxing matches? I mean, granted, like you said, you said there were the different disciplines that you had to, but in terms of intensity and how many people you were bringing in to train, how different was it training for an MMA fight?
The intensity was high, like kickboxing also. The intensity depends of you also, the way how you like to train. I like to train hard. I like to go deep, and like I say, I look from day to day, and sorry, my concentration a little bit.
Oh, that's okay.
Again, the question, please.
Sure. So, I mean, training for this as opposed to training for, you know, your kickboxing, how much different was it? The intensity, you know, everything when going for this camp as opposed to what you used to have to do.
The intensity was hard, but the same time was also nice. Why? When I used to do kickboxing, It's only kickboxing and weight and condition trainings. But with MMA, no, the same time when I was doing kickboxing, I always used to do once a week a different kind of sport, tennis or play soccer with friends. And now every training I go with big passion, like now I'm gonna do MMA, or now I'm gonna do wrestling, now I'm gonna do jiu-jitsu. Every time something new. That's good for your mind. For my mind, it was very good. So it was not like again kickboxing or again wrestling. So every day I do different kind of sports, and that makes me more hungry to learn things and to train hard. You know.
Well, speaking of coming over to MMA and coming to the UFC, why now? Why was the timing right for you to come to the UFC now? I mean, is it you feeling that you're in your prime now? I mean, you have such a storied history in kickboxing and all the fights. Why was the timing right now for you to make the jump over to the UFC and back into MMA? Because you've had an MMA fight. It didn't maybe go your way. It was quite some time ago, but why now?
Because I think everything happened with a reason, you know. If you asked me 10 years ago, why not MMA? That was not the time, you know. I was still hungry to beat people up in kickboxing, and I have that time still big challenge in kickboxing, what I don't have anymore since 2 years, 2.5 years. And I decided to stop kickboxing because I was not hungry anymore to train and to fight, because there was nobody like in the old times with K1. And so I stopped for 2.5 years, and I was busy with trying to do other things. But I feel like 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, an empty place in my heart, like I fight for 20 years and I win the title, I stop in my prime time. But that was not the right time to stop, you know, for my feeling, because I was like 30 years old and I win the title, but I didn't defend it, and also because of a couple of issues with the organization. But like I say, everything happened with a reason. Now I stopped for 2 years, I feel the emptiness here, and I came back in a bigger stage, the biggest martial arts organization, UFC, with a lot of challenge for me. So I am hungry again, and it's time to open a new book and finish my career on the right way, you know? So in my mind, I'm like 11, 12 years again and learning things very, very fast, and I'm ready to fight for 4 or 5 years more, you know?
And I think we've seen guys like Overeem, Stefan Struve, guys that have kickboxing backgrounds come over. How well and how much of an impact do you think your kickboxing background is going to transfer over? And do you think it's are the guys in MMA, have they seen your level of kickboxing? Have they seen your level of striking? Are you going to bring something that they haven't seen yet?
See, I think you know the answer of this question already, you know. I am a striker, and they try to be a striker, you know. I'm 100% sure I'm gonna bring new things, what people wanna see in the MMA. My style is kickboxing, but my style was special. Why? Because I have a style, I can fight everybody. I can fight Thai style, I can fight with a lot of footwork, I can fight big guys, you know, I fight everybody. So I fight the smallest, I fight the biggest, so for every fight I had a different game plan. I trained 20 different systems. Because of that, my style became special, explosive, hot, and like I say, this is what people want to see, and I'm sure they're not used to this, and they're gonna be in shock, 100%.
I like it. Well, speaking to the debut, I mean, you're no stranger to big stages. You know, you fought for many, many titles, but are there any sort of nerves? Is there excitement? Is there anticipation? What are you feeling when it comes to having this debut with the UFC?
This, like you say, it's not the first time. I fight already 100 professional fights. I have the feeling again, you know, before a fight, you need to have these nerves. You need to be a little bit scared. This makes you more sharper, you know. This feeling I have again. And I'm busy again with my entrance music. I'm busy again with short I'm gonna fight with. I'm busy again with everything, you know. So the feeling is back. The feeling what you need to have before you go to a fight. So I'm a little bit nervous, but healthy nervous.
That's great. And I think you mentioned before, you said you were hoping, you know, you're just starting, but this entry into MMA, you're hoping good 4 or 5 years or so?
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to. If I don't have injuries and, you know, I never get heavy knocked out in kickboxing, I never get heavy injured in kickboxing. So I'm healthy, I live good, train hard, so why not?
Let's hop over to your opponent. What do you know of him? You know, do you know where do you expect him to take the fight? Where is he dangerous? What sort of things do you know about him?
I don't know a lot of him. I see a couple of fights, and the fights he do, I don't see many things. So it was boring after 2 times watching his fights, and I stopped watching his fights and just train. And he's 27 years old. I know how hungry I was when I was 27, so he will be hungry too, but that's it. We are hungry. Otherwise, we're not here.
I like it. How many, I had read that you signed a multi-deal contract. How many fights did you sign on for with the UFC?
I signed 4 fights.
4 fights?
4
okay,
fights.
very good. So hopping to 2018, how many times do you hoping to fight in 2018? And you know, depending on this, and it's quick. I mean, I'm sure fighting again this year is probably out of, you know, not a possibility. But looking at 2018, what are the short-term goals for yourself? Is it to get a couple fights, 2 fights, 3 fights? You know.
See, I'm gonna make my comeback. I decide to make my comeback, not to fight once a year. You know, I signed 4 fights next year. This time, I wanna fight for the title. That's something what is in my mind, and I will make it happen. And I would love to fight 3 times a year, 4 times a year, 10 times a year if possible. I'm gonna be ready after my fight. No injuries, direct go to the gym and start training again. So I hope I'm gonna fight as much as I can fight.
With all the belts and everything that you have, where would a UFC title rank amongst all those K1 awards and everything that you've got? Where would it place for you?
It's a new book, you know. It's a different book. Now at this moment, I open a new book, and the UFC belt will get its own place, like the K1 belt has, like the Glory belt has, you know. So it's a new dream, what come true, and I didn't fight 2.5 years, and here I am, UFC with my new book, and let's bring the belts, man.
And finally, when you play the fight out in your head, how do you see the fight ending, and how do you see it playing out?
The fight is gonna end in a heavy KO, man. I don't know how, but the speed is so fast that, you know, I even can answer what I see. So it's gonna be crazy, man.
Welcome back to the MMA Roadshow. That was Gokhan Saki, an absolutely intense dude. I am looking forward to that debut, no doubt. And now let's bring in the man who did the interview all the way in Tokyo right now. It is our man Cold Coffee live at the Tokyo Hilton. Although I guess we should probably just say right up front, you were not actually staying at the Tokyo Hilton, my friend. You were just working there right now.
That is true. Where are we at? where we at? Why ain't we at Boomers?
You are in Tokyo, man. It's got to be a little bit, I mean, bittersweet for you because I know how much you love Tokyo. It's your favorite city, and that's the reason you're there. I mean, you know, we said it. The company said, hey, we can only send one person, and I guess that probably worked out okay considering the main event kind of fell out, and it's definitely getting less attention. But you still got some good stuff, and we'll talk about that. But I guess it worked out good that we only sent one person. And I know you love Tokyo, so I had no problem letting you be the man. But I got to ask, it's got to be a little bit bittersweet because back in your UFC days, you used to get to stay at the Tokyo Hilton. Hell, I even crashed on your floor a couple times. That damn hotel was so nice. And now we're on the MMA junkie budget. And it's walking distance, but it doesn't quite have the same amenities where you're staying at.
It most certainly doesn't. I remember that first day, that first time that I stayed here, and I remember you and a couple of the other journalists at the time came up, and I was, kind of fake playing that my view was terrible, and I was like, guys, my view's terrible. I think I was on like the 40th floor, something crazy high up. And I remember opening up the blinds and felt like I was in the Blade Runner movie with all the lights and the buildings around, and just being completely amazed by it. And the place that I'm staying this time, the lovely Kadoya Hotel, where the room is so small that there's no place to put your luggage either on your bed or you put it on the floor, which you have to kind of leap over to get to the bathroom, which was kind of looked like it was an afterthought when they added it to the room. But honestly, it is closer to all the fun restaurants and other spots that I love going to. So honestly, location, it beats where we normally stay. But yeah, I mean, the Hilton Tokyo is a beautiful building. The staff is second to none. I mean, they all speak English, so you can get everything that you need, without a problem here. But that's at most locations at a big tourist place or big city. If you're at a big establishment like this, they usually have staff that'll speak English. But it makes it really, really nice. And location-wise, I mean, you can't beat where we're staying right now. But it is about a 10-minute walk from there to here. I've been employing that a couple times as opposed to Uber, which is here, but the Uber that's here is it's Uber Black or Uber Van. So those of you that know the Uber things, it's not the lower end of the Uber pool. You're paying a little bit more to do it. But what's nice about it, you could put your location in there. Besides it being, cashless and all that other sort of stuff. Whereas now, if you get into the taxis, a lot of times they don't speak English. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have either the location of where you're going written down in Japanese, you either need a doorman or somebody to sort of help you make sure you're navigating, that you're going to the right place. So Uber sometimes helps with that, but it's a little bit more here. But yeah, man, it's a little bit different from the UFC days, but also too, the UFC was even back then was flying more people out. So there were more friends to kind of hang with and people to kind of explore the city. And I guess that's one of the big things too. I'm used to going around a place with you, so I always have a wingman. He helped to get the work done quicker, and then you can get to go out and explore things. I'm never one to shy away from going and exploring by myself, but when you don't have anybody else to help out on some of the workload and, some of the things, especially on a trip like this where we kind of put some extra things on us to kind of, cover why we were coming out here. And then me had the idea to go on the base visit yesterday that we'll talk about. And, it just makes for long days. And then dealing with the jet lag and switching around was difficult to deal with. But, I wouldn't rather do it anywhere else. I mean, this place is just so unique. If anybody ever gets a chance to come to Tokyo, it's one of those places that just will blow your mind, especially if you love the food. The people are wonderful. The buildings are incredible. I mean, we had an earthquake the other night. When I was up doing editing, felt this like soft like jiggle of my chair, just kind of like almost like if somebody was sitting behind you and just taking the sides of your chair and just kind of shaking.
Oh.
Nothing too rough, but enough to where I was like, this isn't just like something like somebody down below, or running the dishwasher, and then it vibrates the building. Like this, literally, the floor was shaking, and just sort of had this feeling where you just kind of makes you feel really, really small because they're like, there's nothing I can do to control this. You try to grab the table to kind of hold yourself in place, but you're like, wait, the whole damn thing is shaking. But being here in Tokyo, where they're subject to that a lot more, there's no better place to be. I mean, they built the buildings to deal with that sort of thing. So, they buffer out a lot of the effects that you would normally get from earthquakes. But it was interesting. But yeah, I can say it's like the second time I've been in Japan where they've had earthquakes while I was here.
Let's be honest. The first time, you're not really sure if there was an earthquake, if you were just a little too intoxicated at the time.
Well, I was very intoxicated, but there was for sure an earthquake that time as well.
All right, let's talk about what you've been doing there, man. We just listened to the Gokhan Saki audio, and I just kind of wanted to get your impressions first. I mean, I know going over there that you admit it's not like you follow kickboxing, so you didn't really know the guy, and I think you were probably a little bit surprised that I said, "Hey, this 0-1 guy, make sure you hook up with him because I'd like to get some tape on him and kind of get where his head's at." But I do think that slowly but surely, yes, it's kind of late in the game, but I think there is a little bit of buzz building around Gokhan Saki's UFC debut. Give me your impressions, just meeting the guy face to face and being around him.
Yeah, you're right. And even if you could just look at like what happened during the weigh-ins, I mean, the guy is the only, well, maybe not the only, but he easily had the biggest pop from people that were there watching. There actually were some fans, and a lot of the teammates and corners and families of the fighters were in the room, but he had a huge cheering section when he came in there. And so he definitely is bringing some people behind him immediately. He's already making an impact, I can definitely tell. But no, it was great, and researching him quickly, for this trip, seeing his background and seeing what he came from. You never know what you're going to expect. The guy could have came in, with a chip on his shoulder, saying, I'm a champion, I'm a world champion, I'm just going to dominate this sport, but it wasn't. He was very humble. He was very focused. He addressed that, there were areas to work on. And I definitely respected the fact that there's a guy that could have came in acting like, the world was his and, everybody back away. But I didn't get that feeling. I actually kind of got the feeling that here's a guy that really was at a point in his life, where he felt he had sort of conquered his sport. There wasn't anything exciting him at that point. So he kind of stepped away. But, I think the same drive and spirit that made him become so good at what he was doing was just ticking away at him. Just kind of just kept edging away like, I got to get back in there. I got to get back in there. And MMA, luckily for MMA fans, that's where he decided to jump back in. And everything I've been reading from the fans, Turkish people, getting all behind this guy. I mean, people are super stoked to get this guy. And I'm excited that anytime, there's an influx of possible star power, or people that can get people to, carry the MMA mantle, and, especially the UFC brand, which, we've been lucky enough to carry. And ultimately, we want them to do well, because by them doing well, we still have jobs. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that they're finding these athletes, and that these athletes are finding that, hey, maybe this is the next point, because he easily could have just rested on his laurels of what he's done in kickboxing and went on and did something else. But those competitive juices were still flowing, and now we're, if we can get the 4 or 5 years out of him that he is hoping for. I think he's only signed on for 4 or 5 fights, but depending on how a guy goes, that could be in 1 year's time. Here's one of those 4 fights. He fights 3 times next year. That's all 4 fights. So there's a lot of room for growth. But I love the fact that he was, even talking about training camp, was just talking about how he's trying to learn the different things, kind of feeling out the process. He seemed very, very excited about getting into something new, and you can feel that. So I felt at the end of the interview kind of almost inspired, by a gentleman that had already reached a high plateau, you know, to be willing to jump into another area and go and not really, you can't say a guy like that's going to be starting from scratch by any means.
Right.
But he is, in a sense, starting from the bottom and hopes to work his way up. But I think with the level of striking that we've seen and videos and just knowing what awards and things that he's won, I mean, we've seen what Overeem is able to do when he's firing on all cylinders. We've seen Seth Struve when his kickboxing is on point. So I'm very, very excited to see what he's going to bring. And if, you know, and if his ground game, if his wrestling, if he's able to hold off that, if that part is coming up, I mean, this could be a big player making a big splash in a division that needs it, and that, you know, in all actuality, is kind of thin, you know. So I think you know, he can do really good things, man. I'm excited to see how it all works out for him.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about, you know, the potential influx of star power. I mean, listen, I mean, he could go out there and he could lay an egg, and it could be a terrible fight. He could get beat. You know, he could get taken down in 12 seconds, and we could just go, well, that was an experiment. But I don't know. I mean, as many fights as there are, and as many events as we have to cover, like, I'm stoked about it. Like, this is something interesting. There's a potential that this guy could be something special, and maybe he won't be.
Yeah.
But at least those beginning seconds of the fight will be fun to watch. So I'm intrigued by that. I'm excited. So, all right, Kokavi, first trip to Japan in 2 years for the UFC. I just kind of want to get your idea. Like, give me the idea what the vibe is like. I mean, I don't believe any other Western media traveled over there. What's the coverage level like? I mean, you talked about the weigh-ins. It did seem like there were a decent amount of people there at the weigh-ins, but I couldn't tell how much media it was, how many camps it was, that sort of thing. So, I mean, what is the vibe like? I mean, we know the UFC has struggled to get a good foothold in Japan, and it's been 2 years now. I mean, is there an excitement level? And I guess I should preface it by saying, too, it's always a little bit weird to say that because Tokyo is so big. It's not like you can take over the city, you know what I mean? And the other thing too is the arena. You know, Saitama Super Arena is a good 30, 40 minutes away from where the hotel zone is. So I guess it's kind of hard to judge the buzz, so to speak, on the ground when you're in Tokyo. But you can at least tell me, you know, kind of what the media coverage was like, and are you getting a sense that this is an event that people care about, or has it been too long?
You know, I think it's kind of twofold, and you're right with the venue. I mean, the venue's not even in Tokyo. You know, it's like an hour away in Saitama. So I think you're not going to get that walk-up crowd. You're missing out on all those things that a lot of venues right in the middle of the city of a downtown area. There's always that walk-up traffic, or the ones that are like, oh, hey, we're not doing anything. It's not a heavy lift. Let's go down there. You know, and also, I mean, the fights start super early in the day. You know, I think that's always a tough sell. But as for media, I mean, the media's here. I mean, it's not Western media by any means. I mean, I think I am probably one of the only primarily English-speaking outlets that's here doing anything, which is great and fun. You know, that we've kind of seen that many times when we go to some of these Asian countries, and it's kind of nice to be that, so that, you know, if there are any like Americans on the card or anything, you know, they're always like, "Hey, bro, yeah, I know you're going to interview me."
Thank God I can speak English to somebody.
Yeah. But you know, I think the ticket sales have gotten better. But is it one of the strongest events that's happened recently? No. But again, I think it's a market that is. It's a very reserved market. You know, like I think people always. You know, you talk about going to shows. It's not a rambunctious crowd. But they'll be there early. They'll be in their seats. They'll be clapping, and they pay attention better than anybody. So they're always in it. But I just think in this day and age, without these huge star power, you know, kind of gravitating, and that's not just Tokyo. I think that's any country. We get it in the U.S. all the time too. You know, if there's not a star on the card, half the times people are just sort of checked out about it. So unless they're really bought into the brand itself and that brand means something to them, you know, a lot of people aren't going out of their way to watch the fights. We see that in the States. So here, I think with the lack of major stars kind of driving this area, I think the people just haven't found a reason to really make it a priority that when it comes that they get it, But I think, I was asking you earlier, I was like, how many fighters we got on the roster, that are the Japanese descent, and I think you said it was around 8, and I think you have people like Ishihara, which has all the possibilities in the world to become a mainstream fighter, but in the same sense, he's working on getting English and become,
and he's got to win,
mainstream.
and he's got to win,
and he's got to win. But it's almost like he's working on the U.S. market,
wow.
Whereas it'd almost be like, man, it'd be really cool if he could kind of get this market engaged again, and then bring that whole power of the Japanese fan base back into America, and then just use that, because Americans love winners. So if a guy comes in and he's winning, and he's got this huge fan base, people want to jump on the bandwagon. That's just the American mentality. Everybody jumps on bandwagon. And somebody's a winner, hey, that's my team. I've been rooting them forever. Yeah, of course, So I think in here, I think they appreciate the fact that a fight is going on, but, with no huge stars that are, I'm not hearing about, media outlets like, oh, I'm sure some of them are doing some rounds, but I'm not hearing of any fighters doing any crazy media rounds around here. I'm not hearing of them making big hits on TV stations. And we all know that, for a local market, a lot of times you need that to give that little pop for the casual fan or for the people that don't even know that's going on, that, if they don't live in the bubble like we do, they just don't know. So I think it's tough. It's a tough area, and hopefully we're going to get to speak to some of the UFC staff that kind of can give us a little insight later on about how you address that problem. How do you try to keep it going forward? If it's an area where you're not hitting every year, how do you keep momentum?
Well,
I think that's a tough cookie to crack.
Yeah, I do hope you get a chance to talk to UFC officials about that too, because I wonder too. I know that it's convenient, the fact that you can do the shows in the morning in Tokyo, and with the time change, it airs in prime time in the United States. That's great. There's no question that the North American market is the most important market overall. But I do wonder if it's just damn time to bite the bullet and do a prime time event. My understanding is the Shanghai debut in November, but that will be prime time in China, which obviously, every company is trying to make inroads in China right now, no matter what industry they're in, because of the size of the market. So they're going to cater specifically to that market, and they're going to do a primetime show. And I get that this is on FXX, and maybe this is part of the Fox contract, and how the moving parts work behind the scenes. It's never as easy as we think it would be. But I just wonder, as long as they've been kind of dipping their toes in the Japanese market, if it's high time to just bite the bullet and say, damn it, let's do this thing in prime time and at least see, as you said, can you get more casual fans if you're not asking them to be there at 9 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah. It's tough. And I wonder if, I think it'd be maybe a hard sell to get away from the Saitama, see if there's another venue. It's such a big venue. It's so storied, but yeah, it's far out. It's way too big a lot of times.
Sure.
They don't use it. They don't fill half of the capacity, and even though the building is so incredibly cool, how it sort of transforms and can get bigger and widen out, it unfortunately can't shrink itself down to a small venue to where it looks full when people are there. But
very true.
I just wonder if they could bring it closer to the people to make it easier. I think they got to make it easier for the casual fans, to pick it up. But again, even if you have a big local showing and then you're missing out on, a big presence in the U.S., does that hurt as well? But in a case like this, where it's a Fox deal, it's already money paid for. It's not a pay-per-view. So they're not really losing anything except for the fact that maybe Fox doesn't want a super low turnout on numbers, because then they have to start addressing, well, all right, we went and did a fight at local time, which was a terrible time for us, and then the turnout on TV was absolutely horrid. I'm glad you had great ticket sales, but we had, less than a million viewers, watching it. Whereas I think they're probably hoping to break that number, by putting in a more friendly time for the U.S. But
it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act. There's no doubt about it.
I'm sure there's a lot of politics involved where they have to kind of do it to save face, because I'm sure they understand. I mean, I guarantee the UFC understands that
we're not the only ones to figure this out.
Yeah, that they need to have it at a better time to get a better local showing, but also they can't completely slap Fox in the face and say, sorry, we put this on at the absolute worst possible time, the time that you're normally running your infomercials, that they're actually getting paid for instead of paying for it. It's interesting, but the fans that are going to be going, I mean, they're going to be respectful. They're going to love it. And looking at the card, there's some good fights, man.
It's a cool crowd, man.
It should be interesting.
It really is a cool crowd. All right, let's say your coverage. You didn't get to go to the media day, as you said. You would have been the only probably full English speaking media there. You didn't get to go, and that's on me.
Full English. I mean, I partially speak.
Yeah.
Half the time I don't know what I speak.
Well, it's on me that you weren't there. I booked your flight, and I did not realize, as I probably should have, that there would be this kind of day off scenario where the weigh-ins were Thursday night local time, the fights are Saturday morning local time. So Friday ends up being a day off. It's the exact scenario that we did in Auckland. But fortunately, in Auckland, we were there longer because we had that 2-week swing. So we were there early and it didn't matter. So I know it's been a really tight schedule for you since you came in essentially kind of late with that missing day. But you did have a chance to sit down and talk to Ovince St. Preux as well. And I think Ovince is getting a lot better with the media, man. I think he's getting a lot more comfortable than he used to be. Not that he was ever uncomfortable. I just felt like he just was kind of quiet and didn't really, care. But I think he's getting really good at it. But I want to get kind of your take on him too, because here he is taking on Yushin Okami. It was supposed to be the rematch that, I mean, I don't think anybody was incredibly excited for the rematch, but at least Mauricio Shogun Rua is, not only a legend in Japan, but also a legend in Brazil, just a legend in the sport in general. Yushin Okami, certainly well respected, but not the name power, not the star power, and he's coming in on short notice. He's moving up, 1 or 2 divisions, depending on how you consider him, a welterweight or a middleweight, because he's done both. The deck is definitely stacked against Yushin Okami, but Okami's no joke either. I mean, he's the kind of guy that you can't count him out of any fight because he's just a veteran. He's scrappy, he's tough, but I don't know. What was your take being around OSP? Was he, it's kind of funny. Sometimes we see fighters act one way when the camera's on and then one when the camera's off. I mean, is he just putting on a good face and trying to be the positive guy, or does he feel like, hey, maybe the situation's not perfect, but I'm going to make the best of it?
Yeah, and he definitely is putting on a good face. And even to preface the whole interview, and depending on how he looked, because I thought he did great in the interview, but there was a mix-up on the schedule. Even though they sent out an updated schedule saying that he had the interview with me, somewhere in the schedule that they were referring, it wasn't listed. So, of course, these things happen. So the time that initially he was supposed to be here, he was taking a nap. Because part of, this fight's very early. So, a lot of these camps, they really have to work on getting the fighter to make sure he's peaking at the right point during the day and napping at certain times. So at the point of when I was supposed to have my interview, he was napping. So when he first came down the interview, literally, I'm seeing the guy wipe sleep out of his eye. Like, I know he was tired. So for someone to be like, oh, man, he was flat in that interview. Maybe at the beginning, we were all, who isn't a little flat when you just wake up, literally. But the thing about it, and it goes to, how you said you thought, he's doing better with media and stuff. I mean, he got out of a nap. He could have easily pulled a diva card and be like, I'm just not feeling it right now, and not did the interview. But that isn't him. I mean, he's always been rock solid, trustworthy, a pleasure to deal with. And he came straight down from his nap, hopped right in the fucking chair, let me shine a light in his face, and he answered the questions honestly and openly, and that's all I could ask. And, it was great. I mean, I think he dealt with the fact of, here's a guy that, outside of that recent win, was on a 3-fight losing streak. Mm-hmm. I mean, he could have easily been down on himself, but he talked about it. He takes a moment to really reflect on what had happened and realize that there was still one of the biggest things that, and we've heard this time and time again from fighters, but the mental side of it, the game. the mental side that really can kind of get in your head, and it affects your performance. And he had really started addressing those things and really focusing on getting the mental side and really working on the mental fortitude. And I think it's the kind of thing that, I mean, that's what takes fighters to the next level, because we all know that they're athletes, they're incredible athletes, they're fit, you know, there's always points of where, oh, this guy's cardio might went out, or this guy this, you know, but the mental side of things, that's one of those intangibles that I guess we take for granted, that, oh, if a guy can get in the cage and fight, I'm sure he's not afraid of anything, he's not unsure about anything. But that's not often the case. You know, these guys deal with this, and a lot of times, you know, that affects the physical performance. So it's always, I think, a battle that they're working on to make themselves overall a better athlete.
Oh,
and then by doing that, you know, I think it's showing in his interviews, and he's showing everything, because he's always been very open, you know, talking about, usually, you know, I always like to get him talking about his Tennessee days, because, you know, he just brightens up. And I think anybody that goes to a good college somewhere has those memories where you can be in a bad mood and you're going to get excited thinking about your alma mater and all the good things. And I think especially that it's a big D1 program, instilled a lot of good things in him, and especially some of the things that he touches on in his interview about visualization. And we hear that over and over again of fighters visualizing how this fight's going to do. Conor's all about it. Conor visualized what he was going to do, and look at what the guy's done. I mean, he's been on an unstoppable streak because he believes in what he sees and what he envisions for himself. And we're seeing that, and that's what Ovince is really trying to work on. And I think we're starting to reap the benefits of that, because he's coming in knowing what he wants to do in this world. You know, while there's been some setbacks, he believes in what he's doing. There's been moments of doubt, but he's also the kind of person, he doesn't focus on those doubts. And I think that's how you survive in this sport. You know, I think once you get into a point where that doubt sits in and you're not willing to find a way to work past it and just take it as another challenge that you need to address, I think if you don't address it, you're going to have a short time in this game. So here's a guy that could have been completely stressed out about what is past, but I think that last win kind of set him back on point, and he's excited about the fight. I mean, this wasn't the person he initially was set out to fight, but you know, we hear about a lot of these guys. You know, most of them are really working about their own game. The opponents kind of, you know, unless they're just so impossibly hard to beat in one particular thing, then you maybe focus on that. I think half these guys are focusing on what they need to do to make sure that they're performing at the peak level. And then, you know, everything else, you take it as it comes. So even though there was an opponent change for him, he ultimately is sticking to the game plan and what he needed to work on, that he had seen that, you know, what had failed him in those past few bouts. So, but he's excited to fight Yushin. I mean, Yushin, I tried to ask him to see if he relished the whole, hey, now you can be the bad guy. You know, I know some guys that love to be the bad guy. But he wasn't biting, you know. That didn't mean anything for him, you know. But that's kind of Ovince, you know. He's not the bad guy. He's not the guy that's going to be going out there and talking trash and trying to get you hyped up in fight week by talking bad about, you know, your family or your camp or whatever. I mean, he's just a guy that gets in there and does what he needs to do, and I think that's why, you know, even back in Tennessee, the football program, and he's one of the guys that, you know, the coaches use as an example to motivate their players. You know, he's one of those guys that just he's a grinder, but he's a good example of what, you know, I would think the UFC would want to be as one of their athletes. You know, he doesn't have, you know, a pristine record, but he's living the lifestyle and he's doing the things that makes the sport look good. So I always enjoy interviewing when he's getting better and better, but you know, half the time I just put that on me as being a shitty interviewer when I think guys when the guys maybe don't say the great things. But no, it was good. It was good to chat with him, and it was good to see where he's at these days.
Well, you know, you touched on something there, man. Just the mental side of the sport. I think it's such a good reminder, man. That, I mean, even these guys at the highest level, man, they still get nerves. They still get self-doubt, man. They still
it's a grinder, man, for them. It really is, man. This is such a mental sport. So I think it's easy as a fan to kind of forget that if you're just watching from the outside and not really seeing these guys behind the scenes. I think it's easy to forget about that and just look at these guys as, you know, superheroes that lock themselves in a cage fearlessly and face, you know, the biggest, baddest dude in the room on the other side.
Right.
And that's not the case, man. They go through it all. So that's a great point. Now let's talk about the physical side of the sport, because you saw some extreme physical side of the sport as well. The weigh-ins. Yeah. Mizuto Hirota. I guess I kind of want you to just kind of set the scene a little bit and tell me what it was, because I've seen the video. I think most people have probably seen the video. If you haven't, be sure and seek it out. It's on MMA Junkie. It's on YouTube. It's on Twitter. It's everywhere. It is rough, and you know, it's funny because we talk about, you know, the cost involved in covering these events, and you know, why we're there to document these events. And I feel like it's moments like this, which, let's be honest, you as a former UFC employee know. I'm sure the UFC has already filed their video footage away and will never be showing it to anybody as to how bad this guy looked. But I guess give me the feel in the room, because man, Mizuto Hirota, as I understand it, was you know, just seeing it, you know, carried him. I mean, he didn't have to be helped out there, but certainly it seemed like he nearly fell off the scale, and you know, Jeff Nowitzki had to help support him, and it just looked rough all the way around. I mean, was the live reaction in the room? I mean, I've been in those rooms like that, and sometimes I guess it's different because, you know, you don't have a lot of, like you said, Western media colleagues. But man, was it as shocking live as it seemed to be on tape?
I know it was shocking for me, but also too in the room, like I was saying, there's a lot of corners and a lot of family, a lot of people sort of that have been hearing things throughout the day. So I think a lot of them were hearing that this guy was struggling. I know some of the talk in the room, you know, we were just like, man, we thought we were going to be done in 35 minutes, 40 minutes, you know, there were like 2 fighters left, and like 40 minutes had passed. And we're like, oh, this is going to be awesome. Sweet. You know, we're going to take a little break, then we're going to do the face-offs. And then as time was going, we kept hearing that maybe, oh, the guy's in the room. But I think what he was doing little spot checks to check his the progress, because what somebody behind me, and I can't verify if this is true or not, but they seem to speak it like it was truth or whatever. But earlier in that day, they were saying that he was 11 pounds over.
Jeez.
And that 1 hour later, he comes for the weigh-in and was only 5 pounds off. So he lost 6 pounds in 1 hour. I mean, when you see him get on the scale, the dude was ripped. He had nothing left to give. His body wouldn't give anything more unless he shaved every hair off his body and would have went towel, you know, with a towel or something. That's the only area. And even then, he still probably only would have got a pound off, if that. You know, maybe a half pound. But watching him come in, I immediately got the sense like, oh, this is not good. I mean, he had sort of that vacant look in his eyes, and he kind of had that wobble, like he was willing himself to go forward and you know, and step on the scale. And after the weight was read, he kind of had this moment, and I thought he was like sort of reflecting on what that meant and all that other stuff. But ultimately, I think he was gathering himself sort of. I'm not sure if he was starting to sort of like lose consciousness a little bit, because he had to sort of think about to get off the scale. And at that point, we see him start to almost fall, and we see the guys moved in. So I felt extremely bad for him, because it looked like it was an extremely bad cut. Like his body just wouldn't give. I'm not sure what he was that he came in on fight week. I know they try to set limits on what guys are coming in at and what they're supposed to be losing, but to be, if we're going to take the random person behind me that I have no idea if what they're saying is completely true, but that's how we do, that he was still 11 pounds over on the day of. I mean, that means he came in really, really heavy, and you know, or possibly thought that he was just going to be able to do it like before, but maybe his body. I mean, we've seen it happen multiple times where people are able, they have a routine and they can just almost guarantee that they could shed those 10 pounds in a day. Like, it's not a big deal. Hey, I do it every day. But at some point, the body pushes back. And the body's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And here's one of those cases where we saw that, but they really pushed it. They went back to the drawing board and kept pushing and pushing to get that pound off. And it literally depleted him. And when you saw his teammate come grab him after Nowitzki and then pulled him off, got him off the thing, I mean, he literally was leaning on that corner. It looked like his legs could have gave out at any point. And when you watch it before it kind of fades to the black, because I went back and was looking at it today and was thinking about it, he didn't go straight to the table for drinks or food or refreshment. He was that was like the walk of a day, like, please set me down. I'm about to lose consciousness, and that's rough, man. That's not safe. I mean, I just feel that however you can try to rehydrate after that point, you're not going to be 100% for this fight just due to the weight cut.
No, I guess if there's a bright side, it's the fact that this is a Thursday night to Saturday morning, so you're getting even longer to recover. I mean, you're talking, 36 hours or so, which is a positive. But yeah, I mean, I just don't see how you get back to 100%. I tell you what, man, not that we weren't aware of the dangers of weight cutting and what it does to athletes, especially you. I mean, you used to work, in the back, so you had access that we didn't have access to as journalists. But man, I'll tell you what, since these early weigh-ins have been instituted, just, being that close, being in that conference room, 5 feet away, 7 feet away, instead of, maybe it's 50 feet away or whatever it is in the arena, and it's on a stage and it's got really nice lighting that helps people's skin tones look better and stuff like that. Yeah. Man, it seems like a constant reminder when we're seeing it up close, how bad this process is. And I don't know what the fix is, man. I mean, people have been trying to figure it out for a long time. I don't think you're ever going to completely do away with weight cutting, but yeah, when you see instances like Mizuto Hirota, it's a little bit scary, and we'll see if he's able to pull it together for the fight. I just don't see how he's going to be even close to full strength after being in that condition. So we'll see. All right, let's talk about outside of the fights, bro. You got to do something a little cool. We talked about it before, the military brat that you are. But you did get to pull away a little bit, like you said, put a little extra work on yourself, and we'll have a piece on MMA Junkie this weekend at some point, most likely. Maybe even next week. Who knows? It's not incredibly time sensitive, but you got to go spend a little time on the airbase. I think, and I don't know if anybody talked about it, am I right that that's the airbase where Brian Stan was born? Am I crazy when I say that?
It could be. I think you're right, because I remember when last time that we were here, we went to a different airbase, and I think I remember him saying that Yokota was where he was from. So it's quite possible. They don't have the biggest medical facilities there, but I'm sure that they could probably, have birthing facilities or something along those lines. But that's probably where his parents were, if they were, stationed at the time. And then, because they were actually talking yesterday, when for certain emergencies, they can handle a lot of things, but for major ones, they actually fly people to either like Hawaii or some other stuff for really big major stuff.
Oh,
but
crazy. Well, what was it like? I mean, I wonder. I mean, it's funny. It wasn't that long ago. I guess it's been a couple of years now, maybe. But when you and I were on the air base in South Korea, which was cool, the military base there. But I kind of wonder, just what it was like for you to be on this air base. Number one, but number two, I mean, is it tense right now? I mean, with all the stuff going on with North Korea, I gotta think. I mean, Tokyo's not right there, but they ain't that damn far away, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. And just to jump back to the stand, I did a quick wiki search, and it is in fact Yokota Air Base where we were at.
Look at me just pulling out random facts.
Yeah, I like it. But you're right. In fact, when you think about this region, I mean, Japan is a huge economic partner and one that we have been sworn to protect. If somebody attacks Japan, man, we're going to be backing them up. Mm-hmm. So, when you got this crazy guy over here shooting missiles over the country, it is a very tense time. But, did you feel it on the ground? Not as much, because I think, a lot of these airmen and these soldiers were so excited just to kind of see the fighters and were doing their thing that they were all smiles. But I think that's the sign of why our fighting force is so incredible, is that, you know, one moment they're smiling, but the next moment, you know, they can have gun in hand and be ready to defend our country. And it's always good to see them. I mean, they were happy. They were very, very excited, but they showed us around the base. And I actually talked a little bit about, with the wing commander, about their mission. And their particular mission there is mobility. So should things need to be getting moved around the region, this is one of the bases where they would be pulling things to and fro. So say something were to happen in South Korea and those areas, this would be one of the stopping points, where, say, if they were moving folks and family and troops back to the States or to other areas, should they have to pull out of South Korea, this is one of the areas where they would pull the troops to and then move them on from here, either back to the States or to another location. So we visited some of the maintenance units. So a lot of times the planes and the things that operate in this region, they all need to get fixed. Mm-hmm. So they constantly, they're bringing jets and planes in there to kind of do some things. So we actually got to walk through some C-130s that they had, which you know, are used to just about everything. It's got a platform that you can set these things up to monitor weather patterns and chase tornadoes and hurricanes, or they can be gunships to help troops on the ground. They can move troops. They can move cargo. So they kind of walked us through some of those planes, and you know, some of the fighters got to sit up in the cockpit, and they actually fired. Well, the soldiers, you know, kicked on the engine, so they actually got to kind of just sit there in the cockpit while the things are running. And I remember thinking in my head, like, don't take the emergency brake off or something. You know? But it was fun, you know. I mean, there's nothing. But I get like a kid in a candy store when I get around that stuff, especially hopping in planes. There was a point in my life where I thought, you know, I was going to go Air Force Academy. I wanted to fly and all this other stuff. But then life settled in, and a degenerate like me, you know, found a different path. But I've always had the utmost respect for it. So it was great to get in there and see the troops and see the fighters, where we, for the most part, was kind of interesting. There was only one American amongst the group, you know, visiting a bunch of U.S. Troops.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
We had Overeem. He's not American.
Yeah.
You know,
I hadn't thought about that.
We had Red. I always butcher her last name. We had Red, the ring card girl from the Philippines, there. And then we had Robert Whitaker, the Aussie champ. So, and I was thinking, do we have any Americans coming on this trip to the U.S. Air Base? You know, so I was glad that Joby was there. But, you know, the great thing about these fighters, and the great thing is about understanding that all of our countries have military forces that are there to protect us and help us out. So they understood the sacrifice that these guys were doing, and they took it in stride and thanked them all. And it was awesome. The troops got a big kick out of it, and I know that their leadership that I spoke with were very, very excited about what that sort of stuff does for the morale. You know, whether it's for a day or two or three, you know, productivity might have been down for that point while we were there, but the morale is high for a few days afterwards. And ultimately, being this far away from friends and family, and it was interesting. I mean, I was talking with guys from Idaho and Utah and you name it, Oklahoma, you know, all these states around the U.S., and they're thousands and thousands of miles away, but doing what they need to do to protect those back home. So it's always take pleasure when I'm able to kind of tag along with UFC to do that sort of thing. I think it's all major sports organizations should really do a good job of doing that sort of thing. And it's funny, I tried to egg the wing commander on. I was like, you know, should other organizations, you know, do a better job? I mean, should you guys be getting more visits? And he wouldn't take the bait. He wasn't going to throw like the NFL or anybody else, because honestly, those organizations do a good job. I mean, they send troops out. There's some really good organizations out there, the USO, Armed Forces Entertainment, I mean, that are sending troops around. But afterwards, he's like, you tried getting me jump on NFL and those guys. I was like, well, just, if we can egg somebody on to come visit, that's all we're trying to do. But he got a good kick out of it. But,
be like, sorry, it's just habit. In most of our interviews, we're trying to get people to talk shit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm sorry. But hey, they're up there with like the best fighters. These guys, especially when they get it to the point where if they're like this gentleman, Colonel Moss, a wing commander, like he's running a base. He's got just thousands and thousands of people's lives in his hands. Like these guys can talk a good game. So I mean, I'd put him up there with the Chael Sonnens of the world, and being able to kind of, sidestep all your little jabs that you're throwing out there trying to get them, but I was trying. I was like, go on, throw it out there. But it was good. It was really, really fun to see, because I think it's one of those moments where, especially, and that's why I my hat's off to a lot of the fighters, because these guys didn't know any of these people personally. I mean, for Christ's sakes, it wasn't even their countrymen, but they realized that the sacrifice that they were doing, so they took time out of their day. I mean, they could have just stayed in town and walked around and explored and just got their little per diem and didn't do a thing, but they were all just like me. Took that 2 hours there, 2 hours back in the worst traffic ever.
Wow.
To visit these people and, signed tons of autographs, took tons of pictures. But to see the troops and see everybody get excited, it was moving. It was good.
That's
Chokes
awesome.
up now thinking about it.
That's awesome, man. Well, speaking of getting out and exploring and doing all that, I was gonna let you gloat over getting to fly business class over there at Tokyo while I was in coach on my flight to San Jose. I was gonna let you gloat over that. I know it's terrible, but I know you got to get some work done, man, and I know you want to at least get a little bit of free time in Tokyo. If you fly all the way across the Pacific Ocean, you should be able to get a little bit of time. So I appreciate you blocking out some time of your day. Obviously, good that we can still get together to do this, even though you're halfway around the world, man. I guess Fight Night, you mentioned a couple of big fights that you're looking forward to, even though this isn't, the highest, rated card ever or whatever. I know I said earlier I'm looking forward to Juice Formiga, Gokhan Saki, Gokhan Saki making his debut, Teruto Ishihara, of course, against Rolando D. I'm excited for that one. But I gotta imagine, what is Jessica Andrade, Claudia Gadelha? Is that the one that you're most peaked for?
I'm super stoked about that fight. I mean, I'd be an idiot to not to say that one. But I think it's an interesting fight because there's a lot of respect being shown by the two. So I know they're both going to bring it. I mean, they can be as friendly as all get out. And I was going to ask Claudia about if I can actually get her to come down to the interview later on. A lot of respect being shown, but these are two fighters that just go out there and throw down. So yeah, I'm super excited for that. I'm excited to see the OSP Okami fight. I want to see, how Okami looks, man. Dude's been gone for like 3 years?
Yeah,
in the UFC. So 3 or 4 years. Gomi, he's another guy that I swear I thought he was already retired, but here he is again. But I'm excited to see how he is. And Dong Young Kim, that's a good fight. Ishihara, how can you not want to see that one?
Mm-hmm.
Everything I've heard about Gokhan, now I'm really excited to see how he's going to look. Charles Rosa, it's a good card, even though, I'll be the first to admit, I a lot of times don't see cards till a couple weeks out from the event.
Right.
Because there's just way too many events. I'm excited about it, but yeah, man, those the main co-main, man, I'm hoping they're fireworks.
Well, hopefully on Fight Night you get some English-speaking winners, or at least a decent translator in the back for you.
Oh gosh, I hope so.
All right, brother. Have fun in Tokyo, and we'll get back together next week and maybe do a little Thirsty Thursday.
Yeah, I need a little boomers in my life.
Right, so big thanks to Cold Coffee for carving out a little bit of his time from over there on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. He's putting in the work. He is a far better videographer than I am, but the interview thing is still new to him. But he's doing a fine job of handling things on his own over there. And yeah, I sure can't shoot videos like him, that's for sure. You can look at the stuff I've done here in San Jose, and you can tell who was shooting what. That's for damn sure. So anyway, glad to hear from him, and yeah, you know, it's a full weekend of MMA, but look who's got you. MMA Junkie has got you covered in both towns, both cards. We're right there on the scene for you, because that's what we... Oh, I burped. Because that's what we do. We have a couple cold frosty beverages, and we cover MMA. That's what's up. Listen, I am going to be on vacation next week, and I am so looking forward to it. I need some time off. Hardcore long-time listeners of the Road Show know that I have some things to handle in the background, and I'm going to handle those things in the background. Finish off a couple little issues and loose ends that I need to handle to get everything going 100% back in the right direction. That said, we're still doing a road show, damn it. 130 weeks straight we have come at you, and we're going to make it 131. Vacation or not, we'll still be back together. No MMA next weekend. How crazy is that? So, I don't know. Maybe we'll do some, I don't know what we'll do. Bring some guests in. I mean, we got no cards to preview. We got nothing. So crazy week that is. So we'll have to change it up a little bit, but not too much. Not too much. We'll have some frosty beverages and we'll toss them in May. Maybe we'll just throw a couple of other things in there. Anyway, listen. Hopefully everything was good. I obviously hate being on the other side of the world as my partner, but glad we can still put together a little podcast here, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're still here, trust me, it means more than you'll ever know. Thanks for listening.